my rural chums.
Welcome to Now Playing's review of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Look at this! I took 9 million steps today.
Part of Now Playing's video game movie review series.
I was not expecting that. But I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
Hosted by Arnie.
You are a weird little dude.
Justin.
Oh, this one is cute. Let's keep him.
And Stuart.
You are so cute.
Me? No way.
This podcast may contain detailed plot spoilers and mild language.
No, this is not some fun family road trip.
Listener discretion is advised.
Here we go.
Today, we're discussing Sonic the Hedgehog 3, starring Jim Carrey, Ben Schwartz, Kristen Ritter, Natasha Rothwell, Shamar Moore, Colleen O'Shaughnessey, with James Marsden, Tika Sumpter, with Idris Elba. Yeah, they actually put 2 withs in this one. And Keanu Reeves, directed by Jeff Fowler. This is Arnie, the Now Playing co-host who lives in Texas, so you know I have a gun, getting ultra nasty, Arnie.
And Stuart.
And this is Justin.
So we are back with Sonic 3. Did not see this as a holiday movie. When they announced that this was coming out so close to Christmas, I'm like, this feels more like a spring, summer franchise. I actually wondered if it might be a secret Christmas movie, if Sonic might end up wearing a Santa hat or something.
My head is still reeling that we are at Sonic 3. I thought that first one was going to be a surefire bomb. And, you know, we saw it in close proximity to Detective Pikachu, a series that has yet to reemerge. Who would have guessed back then that Nintendo would have been the loser?
Yeah, it's crazy to sit here and think that we're on Sonic 3 plus, what was it, 6 or 8 episodes of a Knuckles show?
Mm-hmm. It's a whole Avengers-style franchise we're finding out. This is the movie it's going to tell us. It's MCU Sega style.
Yeah, they've made a lot of money, and this one is coming in well above expectations. They thought this would open around what Sonic the Hedgehog 1 did, about $55 million. Now this is tracking to open much closer to what Sonic 2 did, about $75 million opening weekend.
Meanwhile, Craven has literally been kicked out of my movie theater. Like, it's not even there anymore. It opened last week.
Unlike a lot of movies we've covered recently, War of the Rohirrim and Craven, I feel like Sonic the Hedgehog has been promoted everywhere. I feel like online, TV commercials, tie-ins, Sonic has been everywhere. Did you guys get the phone calls yesterday? I had Sonic call you on the phone and wish you Merry Christmas.
Oh, that's where that came from. It happened while I was actually in the movie, and I was a little bit confused because I did pull up my text to voicemail thing. I'm like, what is going on?
This just shows you my life, but I haven't even looked at my phone yesterday, so maybe. I'll find out sometime this week when I finally look at it.
I should have suspected Arnie was behind it. Sonic's not just going to call me out of the blue.
I did see his face on the AMC shelves. He's a popcorn bucket. I think there's 2 of them, actually. One gold and one blue. And McDonald's is doing tie-in toys.
Oh, and the toy aisle is filled with Sonic stuff, too. So, I mean, it's a full-blown franchise, even though it just doesn't... I mean, it's weird because this is right in our wheelhouse, right? We all were at the age when Sonic was getting big and it was like, all right, this is the next generation of video games. So we're aware of Sonic, but geez, it's just not on my radar.
He didn't feel like Mickey Mouse. I never felt like they were building something that would have the recognizable brand of a Bugs Bunny. It was an awesome video game in the 90s, in the console wars between Nintendo. He was kicking Mario's ass, sure. But if you would have told me that 30 years later, they would be making these expensive live-action movies with him, I couldn't have dreamed it. And I'll just go ahead and say they've already passed me by. I never played a game with Shadow. I don't know even what they're talking about anymore.
I agree. That's the thing is, you talk about that first game, and it was the first trilogy of Sonic games that really got my attention as well. Those are what I go back to and remember the most. And then, Sega had kind of a bad time of it. They started releasing Sonic games for other platforms because the Sega platforms didn't do so well.
Dreamcast. Eee!
Yeah, there were 2 Sonic Adventure games. What I didn't realize is that in the 21st century, there have just been this huge string of Sonic the Hedgehog games that become very story-oriented. And there's a manga series, and all of these deep characters that keep getting introduced, including Shadow, who got his own spin-off game from 2005, and it's a really deep universe that, unfortunately, I don't have the technology or the time to dig into before these movies. I'm going to have to trust in the filmmakers to explain it to me, because I know some people on our Facebook group were hoping I'd get a chance to play Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog, but my GameCube is packed up somewhere, and I don't know if they're available on modern platforms, so I'm just going to have to go with the movies, because I can't catch up on 30 plus years of lore from these games.
No, but I was in the theater with people that obviously knew it. I went on Thursday night, and there was a whole row. They were all together, and they took up from like one side of the theater to the other. I'd say about 15, well, I call them kids, but they were probably late 20s, 30-year-old, and they knew names. When the pink thing comes out at the end, they were like, oh, of course, dude. They recognized things that were going on that I was gripping to try and hold on to.
So what you're describing, Stuart, sounds almost like they're into it for the retroness, but not the retroness that we remember, something that evolved past our time with this property.
Right. There was a cartoon. There was things I feel like, to me, it just always looked like it was trying to be, I guess I just thought Sonic was a failure. I did not ever recognize that he connected with audiences past the 90s.
Yeah, and he even is now teamed up with Mario because Sega is no longer a competitor of Nintendo. There's an entire Mario and Sonic series of games.
What?
Olympic Games.
Oh, you say it ain't so. Really? Oh my God. That's shocking.
Sacrilege almost.
I can't imagine what they would, like he clears the pipes and Sonic rolls down them. How does that even work?
I didn't know what Sonic 3 would look like when we were reviewing Sonic 2 because Jim Carrey as Robotnik, honestly my favorite parts of those first 2 movies. Rewatching them before we did the Knuckles series, it really solidified that I think these are Jim Carrey's best comedy roles since Yes Man. And the 2 Sonic films and Yes Man might be the only comedies he's made in the 21st century that I think are worth checking out. Most of his stuff, Mr. Popper's Penguins, Fun with Dick and Jane, Dumb and Dumber 2, just all crap. But with Sonic 2, he's like, I'm retiring. I'm done with film. And they killed him at the end of part 2, or at least made it appear that way. So if Carrey didn't come back, they'd have an explanation as to why. But hey, they got him back. They really lured him. He had said around Sonic 2, if the Angels bring some sort of script that's written in gold ink, he might come out of retirement. Well, the director spent $100,000, had a script printed in 24 karat gold, and had it hand-delivered to Carrey's door.
This script was written in gold. Oh.
He also got 2 paychecks for playing 2 characters, right? That was probably the bigger reason he came back.
That's what it got written in gold, yes. The thing is, Jim Carrey is a relic as well. I mean, he was very big in the 90s like Sonic, but I also think that he has been diminished over time. And yes, in part for some of those movies you listed, Arnie, and in part that I just feel like, yeah, we don't have comedy movies like that anymore. Adam Sandler makes them for Netflix, so there's not too many places for a stand-up comedian like Jim Carrey to do his mugging. And Sonic, you know, he was the best and the worst thing about it. Like, on some level, he was good in those movies, and then on the other hand, I was kind of cringy, right? There was a little bit of like, oh, you're still doing that 30 years later.
But he's doing it well. I mean, he's now 62 years old, and I think he still has the energy that he had back on his In Living Color days. It doesn't feel like he's going through the motions. It doesn't feel like he's relying on old material either. It's the same shtick, but he's doing it modernized with modern references. And I think, as we'll discuss with this one, he's doing two different characters, playing them differently, both very funny.
Yeah, that's the thing that I knew, is that they were selling him in two performances and Sonic in two performances. Everything is being doubled. Cloning is what I assumed this was all about.
And hey, I'm going to be the first to admit, like, I was sick the week that this came out and not really into it. And somewhere in the back of my head, I did know that Keanu Reeves was in this movie. But when I was sitting there watching it, I did not remember that information. So the whole time, I'm like, that voice sounds a little familiar. I didn't know until the end credits, when it popped up that Keanu was in this movie, that he was the voice of Shadow.
He doesn't say whoa.
That was my big question when I started to do research after seeing this film. How did they get Keanu? I wondered how they got Idris Elba, because he's a respectable star. How do you get him to voice an echidna? And then Keanu, I feel like he passes on a lot of projects and really only takes the ones that speak to him and that really give him a challenge. So why would he take this role? I don't believe he has children, so it's not like he's doing this to make his kids happy the way several people do when they take on franchises. They do it for their kids. The only thing I can find is that the director really tried to appeal to Keanu Reeves with the relationship Shadow has with this little girl, and that it's going to ask a lot from a performance standpoint for a voice actor to sell this tragic relationship and this backstory, and that it has to really get right. And he says Keanu really connected with the depth of Shadow, the dramatic backstory, and he saw an opportunity to do something that would be challenging by doing it with voiceover, and he got really into this.
Now I'm going to be the one to say, whoa, really? Dramatic depth? We got to get Keanu? That's not my thought. Here I am. I guess I just have a different impression of the man. I'm thinking if you have something from the 90s, you get other relics from the 90s. Keanu was a thing in the 90s. He hasn't been as much of a thing in the last 20 years, so we're going for 90s nostalgia, get Keanu Reeves.
Oh, that's right. You're not sitting in on John Wick with us. He's huge right now. John Wick is Keanu's second coming.
Yeah, well, John Wick's big, but I don't know that if Keanu if he stepped out of that franchise, anyone would notice.
Well, it also just kind of speaks to my problem with modern anime movies, which seems to be a thing now, which is just hiring celebrities to do their own voices, not putting on a character. They're just voicing characters as themselves. Chris Pratt as Mario, anybody? I mean, either hire a voice talent to bring life to that character, or hire somebody whose voice is so iconic that you can't help but know who it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. But yet, Keanu doing Keanu, and I did watch some B-roll where he talked a little bit about wanting to differentiate his voice, so he tried to go deeper and keep in that lower register so that he would be opposing to Ben Schwartz, who's much in the higher register. So he was trying to pitch his voice a certain way, but not do a voice the way I think we have with the voiceover actress who does Tails.
Yeah, it felt like this is the closest we're ever going to get to Keanu doing a Batman voice.
He actually did Batman in that Super Pets movie.
Oh, wow. Did I know that? I'm trying to forget that ever happened in my life.
And the director himself had a connection with Shadow. I didn't realize this. Again, I can't keep up with the lore, but Shadow was introduced back in 2003, and the director, Fowler, worked at a company called Blur Studios, who did a lot of the cinematics in that game. And so he had been one of the creators of this character in the cutscenes and things. And so he really was excited to get back to this character. Of all the ones introduced in the series, I think from the interviews I read, Shadow was the one he really wanted to nail. Fowler is back after doing the entire trilogy. He hasn't directed anything else. So
yeah, what a weird passion project. I only want to make Sonic movies. He's done well enough that he could have graduated, but this must be a thing for him. This must be fulfilling something meaningful to complete the trilogy at least.
There's rumors he's going to do a reboot of the Pink Panther, which has already been rebooted with Steve Martin once, but they're rebooting it again, and he's going to do that.
Are we talking about Inspector Clouseau, or will there actually be a Pink Panther walking around with the detective? I mean, that's the thing. After Sonic, I tend to believe it's another live-action animation combo.
Well, people were excited for Sonic 3. I went and saw this on Thursday night, 6 p.m. showing. Now, I normally go to the Alamo Drafthouse. I love that they have that no talking, no phones policy. I'm never distracted. Thank God they don't have a no notepad policy so that I don't get in trouble for taking my notes at Alamo. But the only showings at Alamo, because this is a PG movie, are what they call the kid-friendly showings, where they aren't as strict about those rules. And I'm like, all right, if you're advertising kid-friendly, I guess I'll go to the Marcus theaters instead. Plus, I think Alamo made a mistake. They gave their big screen to Musafa, which isn't doing so well this weekend at the box office. They had Sonic on a small screen, whereas Marcus had it on their DLX screen. So I went to the DLX experience. Theater was about half full, which is pretty full for a Thursday night at 6. Lots of families, lots of children. If I was hoping to escape crying babies, this was not the showing to go to. Youngins crying during dramatic moments of the film. There were a lot of young reactions from the theater I was in.
So I already mentioned I was sick, but I originally planned on going on Thursday evening, and I had looked at getting tickets and everything. And before I checked out on my app, like, the theater was less than half full on a Thursday night. But I ended up not going to that one. I went Friday morning at 11. And it's Christmas break, right? Kids are out of school, going to movies. I think that's probably how they're getting big box office right now. It was me and one couple in the entire theater in this entire showing.
A couple?
Yeah.
Romantic date.
I mean, it's what I would normally expect for a Thursday morning, but also at the same time, you know, Christmas break, kids out of school. I would have thought maybe, you know, a few more people in there, but nope.
I'm envious of that couple because I cannot convince Marjorie to go to these movies with me. She loves Jim Carrey and has no interest in the Sonic movies. And when I rewatched them at home, preparing for Knuckles, she sat in for some of them and was just like, nope. I don't know what it is. I haven't picked her brain about what it is about Sonic she doesn't like, but she loves watching the old Jim Carrey stuff, as do I. You know, even me, myself, and Irene, we watch quite often. So I don't know why I can't get her to sit for Sonic. And she loved that game in the 90s just like we did. But no, she is avoiding the series, told me, I'm sorry when I was leaving to go watch the movie. I came back. She's like, how bad was it? I'm like, what is this impression you have? This thing has decent reviews.
Maybe she's listened to the show.
Yeah. You're the only one I think that has given green arrows to this, right? You keep getting shocked that people don't like it, but we don't like it.
I'm not the only one. Justin joined me in a recommend for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but I was the only one recommending Part 1, and I was the only one recommending Knuckles.
Jeez, was I sick back for Sonic 2 as well? I don't remember recommending it.
Yeah, you need to check your medication. Anyway, let's find out if this is going to hold for Sonic 3. Arden, give them the plot. We'll get into it.
Did you know Sonic wasn't the first space hedgehog on Earth? Over 50 years ago, a meteor brought Shadow the Hedgehog to Earth, voiced by Keanu Reeves. Discovered by Professor Gerald Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey, Shadow's chaos energy was studied in a secret bunker. Shadow befriended Gerald's young granddaughter Maria, but tragedy struck when agents attacked, killing Maria. In the aftermath, Robotnik was imprisoned, and Shadow was put in suspended animation. In the present, Shadow awakens, seeking vengeance on humanity. Commander Walters of Gun enlists Team Sonic, which is Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, to stop Shadow. But the Dark Hedgehog proves too powerful. After a drone attack kills Walters, Sonic receives a key to Gun's ultimate weapon, making him a target of Director Rockwell, played by newcomer to the series Kristen Ritter. Sonic learns that Ivo Robotnik, grandson of Gerald Robotnik and also played by Jim Carrey, is alive and blames Shadow's breakout on his grandfather, Gerald, who is also still alive. Gerald teams up with Shadow to steal Gun's ultimate weapon, the Eclipse cannon, and launch it into space. In the process, Sonic's foster father and friend Tom, played by James Marsden, is gravely injured. What is it with James Marsden and Part 3s that he's barely in them and then taken out way too easily? X-Men 3, Sonic 3.
He's way too busy doing other stuff.
Fueled by rage, Sonic uses the Master Emerald to become Super Sonic and confronts Shadow in space. Their battle escalates when Shadow absorbs Chaos Emerald energy, becoming Super Shadow. Meanwhile, the Robotniks clash when Gerald reveals the plan is to cause the extinction of humanity. Ivo doesn't want to kill all the humans, he just wants to rule them, so with Tails and Knuckles' help, Ivo sends Gerald into an energy field, presumably killing the old man. Sonic defeats Shadow in combat, but hesitates on delivering the killing blow. He gives up the fight and convinces Shadow to also abandon his revenge, and together they stop the Eclipse cannon. Shadow and Ivo Robotnik sacrifice themselves to save Earth. In the aftermath, Sonic reunites with Tom and his family, but during a race, Sonic ends up in New York, where he battles Metal Sonic, a robot version of himself. He's then surrounded by an army of Metal Sonics, but is rescued by mysterious pink hedgehog Amy Rose. As credits roll, to a stinger that teases Shadow's possible survival.
As we get started, this feels, probably intentionally, very much like a Godzilla movie. There's a island off the Bay of Tokyo. I guess we were here as the stinger for part 2. There's a secret lab way down below where they have a hedgehog in a tube. And no, it's been sleeping all this time, just like Godzilla. And then, for whatever reason, I'm not sure if there's a motivating factor, he just wakes up.
They say in the film he must have had help. If he'd been asleep for 50 years, something must have happened externally to help him. And we're led to believe that Gerald Robotnik, Professor Robotnik, the grandpa, might have done something, but we're never shown what. One of my big complaints about this movie is I have a lot of questions about what went down in the 70s in this base, and it leads right up till now when, he wakes up for reasons. He has some dreams, and that wakes him up out of the tube. I thought, like you, Stuart, I thought this was a dark clone of Sonic when we saw him at the end of part 2. I thought since Robotnik had always been about, I want Sonic's quills, and getting Sonic's quills, that he'd used one of those quills to make a dark Sonic as a weapon. I never suspected we were going to find out that he predates Sonic and showed up back in the 70s.
Space aliens. They're even going to use that word aliens, and it's going to shock Sonic and everyone that think of themselves. But it's true. They come from outer space, not genetic labs.
Is this opening making you guys feel our age now? Because, they're 50 years ago, and in my mind, 50 years ago is always the 1950s. No, 1974 is 50 years ago now, not ancient history.
I am over 50 years old, so yes, I can track exactly when that is.
Yeah, I agree with you that it certainly hit home a little different when I realized that this backstory so long ago, I wasn't alive for it, but I might have been in my mother's womb for it. I was pretty close to alive during this flashback period that Shadow is remembering when he has images of fingers playing a guitar and running down a corridor and things. His memories, they're 72, 73.
So in addition to making me feel old, I'm starting to get a little bit of false hope here, because at the beginning, the first actor we see is one of the guys from Lonely Island, which I think those guys are hilarious and they don't get enough play, but he was awesome in Hot Rod, playing against Andy Samberg as his brother. And I was like, oh, great. So maybe they found, some casting that's really going to elevate this. He's only in it for the first scene, and he's exposable. It didn't go anywhere, so I think that's kind of my first idea of what we were getting into here. I was giving myself a little more hope than I should have, and was quickly reminded what movie series we're in here.
Yeah, you and I stand on opposite sides of the table when it comes to Hot Rod. I know that you enjoy that film, and I detest that film. But I do like the Lonely Island guys from a lot of their work on SNL, all of those digital shorts they did with Andy Samberg. There's a great podcast they do now with Seth Meyers where they talk about all the stuff they did on SNL. So I didn't recognize him here, but I do wish there was more of that energy in this film. Was he the one who was excited about donuts, or was he the one who had eaten the last Boston cream donut?
He ate the last donut. He was the one at the control board. Such fertile ground for him to work with too, right? A box of donuts.
Mm-hmm. And some guards being slung against his window. We will find out that in this high-tech prison with only one captive, I assume, you would think they would have more than enough people to contain this, but they have this shadow battle in which he can zip around, not unlike what we've seen Quicksilver or the Flash. He's lightning fast and can make quick work of these guys and blow a hole out of the prison. And soon he is threatening Tokyo.
Yeah, he does this teleportation thing. It's pretty close to what we see Sonic do. He just, appears. He's kind of able to hover. He's kicking and punching people almost always at face level with them, even though he's a smaller hedgehog. I will say the CGI, they keep taking it up a notch. We have come such a long way from that first Sonic trailer with that creepy-looking Sonic with the teeth. Now, the movement here is fluid. I actually think at times the CG is too good. I noticed they've given texture to the eyeballs. There's little ripples on the eyeballs, like real eyeballs have if you study it too close. And it was kind of creeping me out a little bit.
Yeah, even the shape of their irises was starting to freak me out because we got so many close-ups of their eyes, and to have oval irises was just weird to me. But I'm not going to let that be the thing that stops me from enjoying this movie. I'll give you a quick hint. It's going to be the uneven tone throughout that helps ruin it for me.
It is uneven because we have this opening, like you say, could come from a monster movie, Stuart, and then we're going to cut right into something that could have come out of the Knuckles series, except James Marsden deigned to show up for this scene, where they're having a camping trip with Sonic and a race to see who's fastest. I mean, why would you do this? You know Sonic is fastest. Even he's saying that's kind of my thing, but it's all a trick because it's his B. Arthur Day celebration, or B. Earth Day, the day he came to Earth.
Yeah, B. Arthur Day, that's the Golden Girl. We could celebrate her another time.
But there's just a lot of jokes they're going to throw here. Sonic references B. Arthur. Ozzy, the Golden Retriever, is kind of mad at Sonic. He gets a subtitle saying, "You stole my humans." This thing, it keeps up with the name Sonic. It is very fast. It is going to throw one-liners at you and odd references left, right, and center. I almost went and saw this twice because it's just almost impossible to keep up with all these dropped jokes in one watching.
Comedy should be that way, and kids' movies should be that way. You want high energy, you want it to be short, and given that this is a video game, you do need to touch base with that. They do actually, in this opening race, I noticed that Sonic whizzes past a sign and it flips around like it used to at the end of a level on a game. They're hitting all the marks for telling you, yes, we're doing Sonic again. But I agree with you, the animation feels better this time. And yeah, I guess I'm just more accustomed to it. I know who all these people are now that are waiting for him at the party. We don't have to spend so much time reintroducing folks. Knuckles is the meathead. Tails. All right, I don't know about Tails. Is Tails a girl?
They call him he in the movie, but it's voiced by a woman. And he's the brains of the operation. He's like Q to James Bond. He comes up with gadgets.
Okay. And so, yes, they could be a Team Sonic, except Knuckles has his own ego, and he's not cool with that. And it feels solidified. I feel like the movie gets to where it's going pretty quickly soon after this.
Here's where my first problem comes in, because, yeah, the animation, they've upped their game, but the acting, I feel like, has taken steps backwards. I mean, the humans here, you can tell they're talking to tennis balls on sticks. It feels like every scene with the humans and their dialogue is the first take, and they're not really into their characters yet. It feels stilted and sanguine, and even the lines that are written are aimed at 4 or 5-year-olds. So it's just like, here's the basic concept, and I get it, we need some exposition to kick the plot off, but it was over the top childish to me.
I think that you have to realize that it needs to remain that. I had that exact problem with 2, the one you recommended, by the way. And I do remember feeling like some of the messaging here, it is funny how they fall into the cave and then we just get hit with like, okay, here are the themes of the movie. You didn't let your pain change who you are. It's all about the choices we make. Listen to your heart or your lungs. Points to his chest. And it's a joke. But yeah, I do feel like they're setting up the messaging so that nobody misses what this is about. But I also think that, yeah, this is for slightly younger. This should be for tweens and the parents and grandparents that are taking them. So I guess I'm okay with it.
And I'm okay with it because I don't feel like it's belaboring the point. Yes, there are these moments between Tom and Sonic where they're going to have those lines, but this movie doesn't slow down, really. There's no moments where they're going to take a beat and have those kinds of conversations. But yeah, I realized that here they're setting up what are going to be the themes of the movie and Sonic's character arc. They're going to set up a little bit more of that in Tokyo. But I don't think James Marsden is one of the world's greatest thespians. He's a familiar presence I like seeing on screen. I didn't really ever think he wasn't talking to a blue hedgehog, but I also am not being super critical of the performance because I know what movie I'm watching, and I'm just happy Tom's back because he wasn't in that Knuckles series.
I don't think that he adds anything in this movie, but they're going to try. They're going to have him as the person in distress later that is hanging in the balance between life and death. But here he's just there to sort of give these fatherly bits of advice, and we're reminded that this damn hedgehog was missing his owl mom, Longclaw. Yeah. Oh, don't remind us of that first movie. It's such a bad thing.
I thought for sure we were finally going to get the return of Longclaw. We've always wondered what exactly happened when Sonic ran from Longclaw.
No, don't go there, because you can't. You can't smooth that over. It's just awkward. That opening to that first movie is just all kinds of awkward, and they're better just to minimize it. Yes, you drew a mural remembering your mom, who is dead, and that will be thematically important to us later. You talk about comedy, celebrity, cameos. Here we have Kristen Ritter blowing in. Is she supposed to be funny? She is a comedic actress, right?
No, she's also a dramatic actress. She started really with Breaking Bad, where she was a heroin addict. Yeah, she was the bee in Apartment 23, which was a great show, and she was very funny in it. But then she was Jessica Jones, which is a dramatic role. I think she has range. I also think she needs a job, and so she's here for a paycheck. This doesn't feel like something she'd choose to do out of passion for the project.
Yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't feel like she's doing a bit. What's strange is I would expect her to come on giving some kind of energy, and truly, I noticed that it's her, but I don't ever notice why this. I guess it's just important to know that she represents Gunn, who I didn't pay attention to until that Knuckles TV series, but they are the agency that was trying to get Knuckles, right, for much of that, and now they've formed a happy alliance.
I guess, yeah. Sonic seems to be on Gunn's side now somehow, and we must have missed something between the movies and the Knuckles show.
Yeah, I don't feel like that Knuckles show actually built a bridge to this.
No, I don't either. But we've had Gunn before that show because we're going to see Commander Walters, who's been in the previous 2 movies. They were the ones hunting Sonic in the first couple films. They were doing the sting operation in part 2, which led to the disaster at the wedding. And now they're on Sonic's side. They're calling on Sonic for help. I don't know if Tom Butler, who plays Commander Walters, was just like, I'm done having bit parts in these movies, so kill me in this one and bring in somebody to take my place. But Kristen Ritter, if she wasn't Jessica Jones and the bee in Apartment 23 and Breaking Bad, I probably wouldn't even recognize this character here. I'd be like, who's this woman again? She really does nothing in this movie. I have real problems with some of the character motivations, and her character is in a lot of it when we start getting into the main part of the plot, and she's just going to disappear for the entire second half of this movie and never return.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Why would you hire her to be a functional walk-on non-character part?
Man, we can address it later, but I'm still not sure if she was a good guy or a bad guy, to be honest with you. I wasn't sure what her motivations were by the time we get to one of the big scenes near the end, but here's where I'm talking about uneven tone. We were just talking about how the human characters are giving very simple moral lessons to 4 and 5-year-olds. And in the very next scene, we have a character being killed on screen. Is that not whiplash for the younger set? Like, I understand that death is a concept that kids need to be exposed to, but this was just flippant. There's an explosion. Oh, hey, I'm dying. Here, take this. I'm done. It just felt very crass and unnecessary. Like, if you needed him out of the story, put him in a coma or something.
There's a lot of death in this movie. I was shocked by how much death is in this movie.
And I do think, whether it hooked Keanu's dramatic heart or not, I do think that they are trying to tell a more sophisticated, heartfelt, dare I say, Pixar Disney kind of story than they have in the past. In the past, they felt more like Looney Tunes slapstick farces, and this one is definitely going to build towards melodrama. But I also think that they're trying to model themselves on, I mentioned it already, the MCU. You can tell just by the way that they drop down on Tokyo and land, their formation is just like the Avengers. They're aware that you're aware of that. They are trying to build a Sega universe here. And so, yes, I think, Marvel does that, right? It has those human dramatic moments, and then it can go from a really intense scene where someone gets killed and then move into some funny slapstick stuff. This one is trying to follow that, and maybe is, because it's made for something and someone a little less sophisticated, it's maybe not as artful.
I guess all I'm saying is I feel like they're trying too hard to capture the younger crowd that drove the Mario movie a couple years ago. And in trying to do so, uneven is the word I keep coming back to, because this movie should be aimed at 10-year-olds and up, and then pulling on nostalgia strings of 30-year-olds. But right now they're trying to also dip into that pool of very young kids as well. And I just feel like that is a detriment to what they're doing on screen.
They got to sell them toys. Although I guess those toys could be for me, theoretically.
But yeah, we get Team Sonic heading to Tokyo. The chopper flies thanks to one of the magic rings. They're going to do this like Iron Man jump out of the chopper to this fake Imagine Dragons song. I'm like, it sounds like an Imagine Dragons beat, but it's not. I looked it up. It's a song by One OK Rock called Neon. Not a great song, but it's going to lead them into what I thought was another Iron Man thing. The score when Shadow comes out, I swear to God, the music score took a couple of bars from Ozzy Osbourne's Iron Man song, because it feels like the score is like, bum, 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 bum.
We know that Shadow is, the dark side of Sonic, and I think we all know as adults that have seen movies and how this is going to go. They're going to team up, right? It is not a surprise that they will eventually realize they have more similarities than differences and be best friends, that the middle of this movie that pits them against each other is just a tease.
You mean the exact same plot arc from Knuckles in Part 2? I really every movie is going to be introducing a new Sonic character who's a bad guy until they aren't, and then they're going to be part of the team for the next one. We're going to talk about the human characters, but I feel like they're getting so many CGI alien animals in this movie that there isn't time for any human who's not Jim Carrey anymore. They're adding another one in the stinger for this movie. So yeah, of course, Shadow is going to be a bad guy until he isn't.
Again, think of Marvel, MCU. We're building something that big. They're trying for something that big.
And the fight here is pretty good. Again, the graphics are great. Knuckles, he's been so strong as unbeatable, but Shadow takes him down really easily. Get a nice Idris Elba joke. He's much more impressive than the Hedgehog I fought previously. Shadow takes them all out, and then, for reasons I'll never know, Shadow has a motorcycle that fits him perfectly. Is this a kid's motorcycle? Where did he get a motorcycle? He runs so fast. Why does he need a motorcycle? But it's a cool motorcycle.
So he can drive up the side of a building and come back down, Evil Knievel style, to hit Sonic. Yeah, it's just a visual. You probably can buy this. You know, it goes with the toy. It just sets up the idea that Sonic is fighting himself. And, I think there was even a comment made of, like, what would Sonic's life be if he hadn't met his family? This is the answer to that. This is the antisocial Sonic that didn't have, or rather did have, a family, and it was ripped apart from him. We'll get that backstory. Starting with General Walters, who is eating in a restaurant that I was very sad to realize is only in the video game. And I cannot go there for my next birthday party because I would really, really love to have these furries dancing around me while I eat bao with wings and eyes.
This Chow Garden is from the game. I thought it might be a real place. I just put in my notes, Japanese Chuck E. Cheese, but it was awesome. And I did love the joke where the little girl goes up to Tails, "Are you Detective Pikachu?" And even Knuckles is like, "Pika Pika."
Yes, the crowd went wild with that line. And that's why I'm so surprised Nintendo has squashed the beef and let the Mario play with them. It feels like you can't do that.
So Shadow's backstory, there's going to be a huge exposition dump here that the meteorite came to Earth and it had a life form inside. We're going to find out Shadow doesn't remember anything about his life before being on Earth. It feels like I have a lot of unexplained questions about this meteorite to begin with. How did the hedgehog end up in a meteorite? Why did the meteorite come to Earth?
Whatever. Yeah. A space hedgehog came to Earth in a meteorite. And yes, I think the question you're leading towards, when did they realize they could use him for chaos energy? I think they just were keeping him in a tube until Maria dared to get him out. I think it took the mind of a child to encourage the adults to let this dangerous thing out of a tube.
And we are told the professor is in charge. We don't get to see the professor. We only get to see him from behind. It's some bald guy. They put in all the trailers, all the promotion. Jim Carrey was in a dual role in this as Robotnik and old grandpa Robotnik. So instantly I'm like, we know who this professor is. Why are they trying to hide him from us? Is it a mistake that the marketing spoiled this?
No, it's fine that we know that. It doesn't change anything. Frankly, it gives us a little bit of Jim Carrey because this movie is holding on that. It is honestly saying that, God damn it, it's a Sonic movie and not a Robotnik movie, which might upset some of the Jim Carrey fans. Maybe why your wife, Arnie, isn't so into these movies. They're going to make you wait for him. So, yes, this is just a tease to remind you that Robotniks are in it. And no, I don't think anything gets spoiled in a plot. It's not about plot.
And if you're like me, you were somewhat blissfully unaware of the marketing for this movie. I knew it was coming out. I knew it was on our schedule. But to be honest with you, it wasn't on my radar. And going into this movie, I knew there was an older Robotnik. And somewhere in my head, I thought it was David Harbour. I'm not sure where that came from.
Okay. All right. That'd be interesting. But anyway, I mean, what we're really to take from this scene is that in trying to harness chaos energy from this hedgehog, it, not unlike nuclear power, has a destructive side. And it just teases the idea there's an explosion, people were killed, and Shadow was punished. He was put into stasis. He was grounded, to speak in the child terms, but in a tank of goo.
But later on, and we'll talk about it when we get there, but we see a different reason for this explosion. The whole thing doesn't quite make sense to me as to what caused this explosion. Did Shadow's energy cause the explosion? Did Robotnik cause the explosion? I really don't know.
They have an answer in there. Yeah. Walters, they all share responsibility. But right now it's just a tease. And then because, they want to let this go a little bit longer, good instinct, I think. Suddenly we have egg drones outside the window, something else to remind you that Jim Carrey is coming. And they shoot up this wonderful restaurant and kill Walters, who is a character who had no comedic chops. And I don't think anyone will cry about dying.
Again, I was surprised that they killed him, though, to have the death scene, especially when you go from those furries on stage singing a Japanese version of the Jackson 5's I Want You Back right into the death of the general because of the missiles. And some dude in black leather who looks like he came right out of the Matrix. He jumps through the window, shoots down the drones, dodges one of the drone's missiles like Keanu in the Matrix. Sonic's like, we already had our motorcycle chase for this evening, and a guy in the motorcycle goes away. And yeah, we have the dying declaration from Commander Walters. He carries with him the key to the most powerful weapon guns ever built, always has it on him, and Sonic's the only one he trusts to keep him safe. So here's the key as I die. Good thing he stayed awake long enough to hand that key over, because if he'd been concussed or something before dying, nobody would ever know there was a key.
No, Rockwell would come and pick it. They show up at the restaurant minutes later to get it off of him. What she would have done with it, I don't know. I think they're just protecting us. They're doing the right thing. No one should use these keys. We don't want the cannon to be activated.
Yeah, once again, I'm not sure what her motivation is, but she comes in and she approaches Walter's body, and I was like, oh, she's going to check for vitals. Nope, she went right into his pocket looking for the key. So, yeah, was that protective? Was that, orders? Or was that her having ultimate plans? She wants that key? I don't know.
I do guess that she probably had a larger role and she just ended up getting cut because there's too many people in it and she's the least funny.
I agree. There needed to be more to this because even Tails is going to be like, Sonic, why are we running? And Sonic's like, we don't trust anyone until we get more information. But from what I can tell from this movie, if they just stayed and given Director Rockwell the key, all problems would be solved. Like, there wouldn't need to be an adventure. Rockwell would take the key, the other key's in a vault. It's because Sonic doesn't trust people, and this is part of it. Part of Sonic's arc this movie is he's got to learn teamwork. When they were facing down Shadow, Sonic ran off on his own to fight Shadow instead of waiting for Tails and Knuckles, and Sonic says, I'm still working on the teamwork thing. And that's going to be part of his arc, is learning that he has to rely on others and not just be the leader of the team. And I guess maybe that's why he doesn't trust Rockwell, is because he's not a good team player. But from what I can tell, Rockwell is a completely decent person who just is trying to save Earth from being destroyed by the super weapon.
Agreed. And I think part of this is they just want to chase a lead. That the man on the motorcycle that took out all the drones is now zipping away, and they don't wait for Rockwell to arrive. Who knows if Rockwell had arrived, if they would hand over the key. But they have the key, and now they're chasing after the motorcycle person. Tokyo Drift is, of course, their reference. They bring it to a dock, and there's a spacious and crustaceous robo-crab awaiting them. We find out the motorcycle guy is Stone, the assistant, and not surprisingly, inside, 30 minutes in, we finally get Jim Carrey in a fat suit.
My question for you guys is, was Stone a memorable enough character for this reveal to have any oomph for you? Because, sure, eventually I remembered him from the other movies once he had more interactions with Jim Carrey. But just removing the helmet, I was just like, okay, who? And they're like, I was like, who is this? Oh, the iced coffee guy, okay.
I'm going to split the difference with you, Justin. I recognized him, but I don't think he's deserving of a reveal like this. And it wasn't until Knuckles yells, it's the goat milker, did I really solidify for me, it's the guy who makes the lattes, he's always around. But this actor who plays him, I don't know the actor, he's not a big star to me. So this reveal, it's only shocking in that I wondered, why is Robotnik's assistant shooting down Robotnik's drones? Was there a plot twist? Is he now fighting against Robotnik? What is going on? No, he's still just Robotnik's lackey.
Yeah, it sets up a relationship we see in lots of comedic villainy roles. That the henchman, the long-suffering henchman, has more to do than the evil Grandmaster guy. Yes, Jim Carrey is inside eating fattening sweets and watching telenovelas, and he's the one that's actually bringing the Sonic team into the lair and getting the plot going because he knows that this is what his boss really needs. Unsung, unappreciated.
And I have to give a call out. La Ultima Pasión, the telenovela. I got really excited because who's starring in that? But Cristo Fernandez as the twin brothers. Cristo Fernandez, I mentioned him in Venom 3. He's the last human character we see in Venom 3 when he's running around with the cockroach. He's also Danny Rojas from Ted Lasso. He's just a fun guy. He's fun when I see red carpet interviews with him. He's fun when I see him in movies. And so I just got all like giddy during this telenovela that Robotnik is watching. I also love the idea of a drone that not only microwaves your burrito, but has extruders for sour cream and guac.
I will say this is probably the funniest I'm going to find Jim Carrey's performance throughout this movie. I thought this, him down on his luck and just kind of being a slob with his belly out and people walking in on him in an embarrassing moment. That to me is good Jim Carrey comedy. I got a few chuckles out of this scene.
I liked it, and it did remind me, though, of the end of Dodgeball when Ben Stiller put on the fat suit and juggled his jugs to milkshake when Jim Carrey is here playing bongos on his belly. It was reminding me of those jokes. I didn't know if they'd do something to make him suddenly become fit with one of his own inventions, but they're going to say his suit needs to be let out. I didn't notice him as necessarily fat for the rest of the movie. His grandfather is portly, but Robotnik doesn't look that much different once he finally gets the suit on.
No, it's just a physical bit. Just, again, that you want to twist things. Now the enemies have to become friends. The thing that's unimaginable, they're going to team up with Robotnik, I think is the way that it gets put.
And he doesn't want to team up, but he agrees, because he considers his drones his children, his precious babies from his egg sac, and he wants one of Sonic's quills, because now he treats it like a drug. He likes to shock himself and enjoys the jolt that the quill gives him.
Pretty kinky for a kid's film.
Is that just the resolution of his fascination with the quills from the other two movies? Is that what we're to take from this? Is like, don't worry about that. It was really just a little weird kink of his and his grandfather's.
Yes, I think so. But you know what? If they want to throw away a majority of what the first two movies were, I applaud it. I'm just going to say I'm finding that this movie in general is paced better, is moving better, is juggling the humor and all of that. You say that there's these disparate elements, that it shifts in mood, no doubt. I think it's doing a better job than it ever has before.
Yeah, it is going to jump because we're in these scenes with Jim Carrey, which are amusing. I think Jim Carrey, I'm really glad that they sent him the gold script and got him back. I can't imagine a Sonic movie without him. While Sonic and Knuckles have good chemistry and good one-liners, I just don't take to Tails for some reason. I find Tails doesn't get funny lines and doesn't do cool stuff. The other two steal the show.
Only Stone likes Tails. Nobody else does.
Yeah, but I can't imagine one of these movies without Jim Carrey. But then, we're going to have a tonal shift because we're going to go from Carrey's crab back to the gun bunker where Shadow was studied. Shadow is there. And now we get the full flashback of Shadow's backstory on Earth. We meet little Maria, the professor's granddaughter. The professor takes her everywhere, and since he's living on the base to study Shadow, she's on the base to study Shadow, and she and Shadow become good friends. They dance, they make snow angels in donut goo, they race around on roller skates, they watch a Godzilla knockoff movie, and they stare at the stars together. And I am now waiting for the rest of the movie to find out what really happened to Maria, because part of the advertising for this film, they were all over social media with graphics that say, don't spoil the movie. Don't post spoilers for Sonic 3. So I'm coming in expecting a massive freaking twist. Like, the last time I saw a movie really push this hard about don't spoil the movie was like Spider-Man No Way Home, where they're telling you don't say Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in the movie. So I'm looking at every woman in this movie and like, are any of them 60? Kristen Ritter's certainly not 60. She can't be Maria. Who's Maria?
Right, and also that raises the question, that's either Robotnik's sister or at least cousin. No mention of that connectivity whatsoever. It's just, in the story, that's just a little girl that's the granddaughter of Grandpa Robotnik. So is Robotnik. what's going on here? This whole franchise has been about family, and here they are telling a backstory about another family and making no ties within it.
Robotnik is going to say, who did what with whom? And that is a question that they are not going to answer in this movie. I don't know if they're siblings or if they're cousins or what happened. Obviously, though, and we're going to find out at the very end of the film this is true, Maria was Professor Robotnik's favorite grandchild. He didn't care about Jim Carrey Robotnik. He only cared about Maria Robotnik. And there is a backstory from the games. Apparently, the whole reason Gerald Robotnik was working on Project Shadow was to save his granddaughter's life. She had a neuroimmunity deficiency syndrome, and the shadow energy was supposed to be able to cure Maria.
I don't think they're keeping that in continuity. It seems like more it was a nuclear age kind of, this will be better than nuclear. We've got power. We see that Shadow. I think that they didn't know what to do with Shadow. She goes up to the tube. She draws a funny face, gets him in a good sense of humor, gets him out of that tube. And I think the scientists become accustomed to the idea out of this. We can have him run around a centrifuge and gain chaos energy. I think she teaches the scientists that there's energy potential here. I don't see anything about her being sickly or trying to save her life.
No, I'm just saying that's the backstory in the game. Also in the game, she does die, but she is brought back to life through time travel. So maybe that's going to be part 4, is we're going to be traveling through time and Maria Robotnik will return.
Yeah, we got a pink girl hedgehog at the end. I definitely think love, romance, other genders are all going to be coming into it. That seems to be the direction, for sure. And I think you're getting ahead of yourselves. I think that you have already greenlit a Sonic 4, and I imagine we will learn more about this family lineage.
Questions that I wouldn't mind having answered in this movie, not necessarily wanting them answered in a whole nother movie.
But here we get the full reveal of Professor Robotnik, who's been waiting at the base for Shadow, just in time for Team Sonic to show up with Stone and younger Robotnik, who have traced Robotnik's drones to this location. And here, yeah, we get Tails' little bit of backstory, where Stone and Tails team up while they're splitting up, and Stone thinks Tails is Sonic's assistant, and Tails is like, we're all best friends! Like, you're Eggman's best friend, right? And Stone, realizing that maybe there is another relationship to be had than just being a sycophant.
All of this plays really like Nickelodeon level humor. Again, you recognize, I feel the age difference. This is the stuff that's not meant for me. When Knuckles, who's supposed to be Mr. Tough and talking about his muscles all the time, is like frightened by Casper, the friendly ghost. Like, this is something that I imagine, the same imaginary kids I had for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will be chuckling over this. It's done just fine, but parents, be patient. You won't be amused.
I was more amused by Jim Carrey during this period, where he's like saying, I have no parents, no aunts, no uncles, and something about my attitude renders me undesirable to all possible genders. And then, where did you go, Hedgehog? I wasn't finished trauma dumping. I'm enjoying Jim Carrey during these scenes.
Well, this is the big moment, right? They've teased it with telenovelas and all kinds of ways. If you've seen the advertisements, stepping out of the shadows is, yes, Gerald Robotnik, Ivo's grandfather, and we have Jim Carrey in a dual performance. Yeah, they have a lot of fun teasing here, like as they circle each other. How good is the technology going to be? Will you believe that he is playing off of himself? I think Jim Carrey has always been a master of this kind of stuff. I never think of him as having difficulty playing off himself. Other actors might not enjoy working with him, but I do think that he can, be using special effects and technology. He is that kind of comedian. It's a sort of a 21st century prop comedian that can do this kind of stuff.
I'll say this is the first time I'm actually really enjoying Jim Carrey in this role. The last couple times I felt like he's just kind of going through the motions, And I know, Arnie, you keep saying that he's still got it and everything, and I'm not saying he doesn't still have it. It just definitely feels like he's lost a step. But in this movie, I feel like he is giving it more than he has in the past couple movies. Maybe it was a revitalization of him getting to play dual roles.
I'll throw one other thing in. I think it helps that he's minimized. I think in the first movie, he had to be everything. He was the villain, and there weren't other supporting characters, really, other than James Marsden. So that's not funny. Here, because we have so much else going on, when you get him, you're so grateful, and then, it's not overpowering. The flavor is just right.
I think he does really well with the dual roles because I lose Jim Carrey underneath the Gerald Robotnik makeup. I really don't see the same people. I kept thinking about Eddie Murphy and all of those movies he did where he was multiple characters, and a lot of times you don't see Eddie Murphy underneath the fat suits and things. And here, I think the makeup is really well done. I think Jim Carrey gives two well-differentiated performances. I'm laughing when they're like, it's like we're two characters in the movie being played by the same actor. I like that they do that little fourth wall break with it. And it just is a lot of fun to get double the Carrey in this movie.
It makes up for the fact that he has not been in the first half hour of the movie. And so when you get him, you get an extra dose. And again, I think it's a balanced dose. I'm not going to say that I think this movie's hilarious. I don't. I'm not going to say that I think Jim Carrey is hilarious or as good as he was then. You know what? Truth be told, I didn't like Ace Ventura. I like Jim Carrey, the dramatic actor. This is Jim Carrey mugging, and he's doing a good job with it.
And we're going to find out that Grandpa's 110 years old. He'd been locked in prison for 50 years, while Shadow was locked in stasis for 50 years. But he created the Eclipse Cannon, which he gave to Gunn the designs of in exchange for his freedom. And we'll get this clip of what it can do. It reminds me of the laser from Real Genius. You fire a laser from space and can pinpoint a target.
Yeah, that was pinpoint, though. This one seemed like it was more catastrophic than that. I thought this was like wiping cities off the planet.
Well, they said that they were going to take out Gunn headquarters, and in the little demo we get here, it looks like it's just taking out a building. I mean, it's not as specific as Real Genius where you could aim down to a single person and have like a sniper shot, but it's building specific is what he's describing.
But notice what they are doing with the family theme, because I do think it's actually helpful. Now that we have so many more characters, they want to be together. I mean, I think, undersold how touching the Maria and Shadow moments were. It was scored to a Traveling Wilburys song, I like, End of the Line. And I think it just had a different flavor than the rest of the movie had been. You realize that in staring up into the stars, he says, I don't know where I came from. Neither does anybody else. It's a meteor that fell to Earth. But she says, this is your home, and your identity is as my friend. And we've seen that sort of existential angst going on throughout this movie now. Stone will feel replaced now that his master is going to give more time to Grandpap and less time to him. And we'll see how happy the Wachowskis are that their kids, their alien brood, come home to them. I think that this movie is smarter in the way that it sells. I mean, it's one thing to throw a lot of characters at the screen. It's another thing to know how to utilize them. I think the MCU has shown people how you have a large cast of characters and keep them juggling, keep all the balls in the air. This one is doing it.
Kind of. I do feel like a lot of characters are given short shrift in this movie. I feel like at times I'm just paying attention to characters that are standing around while scenes are happening. Tails is given very little to do in the movie until the end. Knuckles has stuff to do until the end.
Do not manifest a Tails miniseries. We do not want more of Tails. We got exactly as much Tails as we need of Tails.
And as I said before, the human characters other than Jim Carrey are completely pushed to the side in this film.
Good!
After Eggman and his grandfather leave Team Sonic behind to be sucked up by this tiny black hole that Shadow has for some reason. It seems like a Robotnik trick, but they're finally going to go back and remind us hey, James Marsden is in this movie, and I feel like James Marsden and his wife were like having COVID hobbies. He'd learned to knit donut sweaters. She was baking bread. Baking bread was a big COVID thing. And they're all like, we have so many hobbies. I could get used to this.
Yeah, he even made this creepy puppet that, she's like begging for him to get rid of. Yes. And again, it reemphasizes the theme of they gave us the impression that Sonic was such a hassle to their life. And now that they've had their life without them and all this drama, boy, are they happy to sign on to another mission. Yes, let's go to London and break into some headquarters because I can't stand being home doing another jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, and I agree with Stuart that, like, in the Sonic world, when the human characters are sidelined, the movie is better for it. So I'm okay with that. And I'm going to give this movie a little credit, even though I don't like what they did with it. Like, the way they brought back her sister and brother-in-law, just to give those actors, the chance to be on screen again, with virtual reality masks or whatnot, fine, that's great. You get them back in the movie, you get them a payday or whatever. I'm not going to say I love the humor of it or anything, but it's better than mucking it up and having them just pop up for no other reason in this movie.
I want to second that because the second movie was the longest movie by far. And part of it was the fact that, they gave all of that time to the sister Rachel's wedding, which, as funny as maybe some of that humor was, slowed the movie down from where it was trying to go. And here, again, because they know they have too many characters, they just say you only get a second. And I go, yay, that's all that I really wanted. We get the best of them, not a lot of them. And it just feels right that we're now just transitioning to London, trying to break into a gun headquarters to get the second key card. Conveniently, they need 2 keys in order to operate the space cannon.
Felt like a Mission Impossible plan. I thought for sure that we were going to see Sonic suspended from wires doing the Tom Cruise because they talk about all the laser grids and all the reasons that they can't get in. And this is going to be what Tails has to do. Tails comes up with the plan on how they can finally get in, and it involves Tom and Maddie using holograms to pretend to be her sister and the sister's husband, and injecting a thumb drive.
Too much to handle. Randall was just pretending to marry her. I don't think they actually got engaged.
No, they got married at the end of 2.
Oh, did they? He did end up falling in love with her anyway?
Yep.
That's how impactful those guys were.
Yeah, I mean, again, just a little bit of it. Just a little bit of sass is all that she needs. Maddie's like, oh, I love being my sister because I can just tell off this door clerk. What's funny is there's already an event going on in the building. We don't process what that is. But of course, it's the fact that the Robotniks have already broken in and created a problem. And it's, just setting the tone for the fact that they are behind here. They're not the first to break into these headquarters. Jim Carrey and his grandpa are already in spandex suits that deflect lasers, and they're going to do a whole coordinated dance routine to a 20-year-old Chemical Brothers song.
Things that I shouldn't be worrying about because it's not necessarily in the movie universe to be worrying about, but their heads were completely unprotected from those lasers. They could have got their heads chopped off.
I thought that. Also, not their heads. Those are body doubles doing the dancing. That was not Jim Carrey. Since I stuck around for the full credits, I noticed the body doubles dancers credited in that, so...
62 years old. I guess he's not as limber as he used to be.
You know what, though? This dance goes on too long, and this is not going to become a TikTok thing like the Bye 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 from Deadpool did. You're not going to have everyone doing the Robotnik dance.
Good.
But I did laugh out loud twice at this movie. The first is, as the Robotniks are going in, Stone says to Shadow, let's go into the crab. I've got fresh avocados. We'll have guac. And Shadow goes, revenge guac. And that line struck me as so goddamn funny that nobody else in the theater laughed, and I was laughing. I never laugh out loud at films alone. And here I was laughing out loud. And then when the dancing is going on, we cut back to Stone and Shadow watching the telenovela as Shadow goes, Gabriella should kill them both. She is not a prize to be won. And I couldn't help myself. I laughed. I'm liking Jim Carrey in this film, but he's not making me laugh. Keanu Reeves has me laughing at Shadow's over-the-topness with his vengeance.
Yeah, what I would say is they have a lot of different kinds of humor going on. If you're paying attention, there's sophisticated humor-ish. And yeah, if you just want kiddie humor, there's some slapstick. Sonic eventually will be engaged. He's been twiddling his thumbs, waiting on the eye. But eventually the plan is that he's got to, this is all silly. He, of course, could have run into this base at any time. But he's got to go tour the sites first before some security system comes down on him, some dome. And so it's funny to see him imitate the Beatles, visit the Queen, do all that he can do. Everything that it takes a week for us to do when we visit London, he does in a few milliseconds.
And there was that funny joke as he's doing the Beatles. He's like, Paul, John, George, the other one. Just mile-a-minute gags in this movie that keep me smiling. Only twice did I laugh, but usually I'm smiling. But yes, we get this break-in, and Knuckles is going to be able to, in a case of emergency, break glass. He could have just gotten into the vault on his own. He just smashes his way through the shield, through the wall, through the ceiling, and lands right there. So all these machinations were for nothing.
Yeah, but like all slapstick cartoon comedy, that's usually the point. They were saving him for last. He was hovering on Big Ben, eager, chomping at the bit to get in there. And once they finally get captive of Kristen Ritter, she's got some variable gravity panels on the floor that are sucking people to the ground. He can override that, smash the controls, and we have some more slapstick fun. People going up and down with gravity, crawling to try and get the second key card.
This is a point in the movie where, once again, I'm thinking about the wrong things, but it's just how my brain works while watching these movies, is the bigger universe, the bigger world here in the Sonic lore aware of these aliens, or are they not? Because there's been at least 2 major events in these other movies where you would think that would have been on the news and people are like, oh, okay, so there's some weird creatures here. But when Sonic is sitting on top of that huge Ferris wheel, they made sure to show us a moment where people saw him and were like, oh, what's this? Not shocked that they're seeing Sonic, but shocked that they're seeing something foreign to them.
I don't think most people in the world realize there are space hedgehogs.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a surprise based upon the reaction of those people. But I agree with you. It was shocking to me that people were shocked by him. It just didn't seem like that big a deal. And yes, because there have been these cataclysmic things that involve them, plus a bowling competition, which had an echidna all over the place, people would be used to this by now, I think.
No one would pay attention to Knuckles. I say that, and yet it was a highly rated Paramount show, whatever that means. Anyway, the point is, Kristen Ritter eventually gets the second key card. What would she have done with it? Was there a plot for her? Doesn't matter, because Tom puts on his Walter's hologram face and takes it from her, and it looks like everything's fine until Shadow gets his revenge punch.
Which apparently broke his arm. Like, I wasn't sure what caused him to, lose consciousness. It looked like he got punched in the gut and went unconscious.
I mean, they could have gone all the way, right? It could have been death.
Well, this movie's shown us that they're not afraid to kill characters.
Yeah, Shadow meant to kill. This was the man that he believes killed Maria. We'll talk about how true that might be in a minute here. But you killed Maria, I'm going to kill you, is what happens here. And again, remember what Tom told Sonic right at the beginning, you shouldn't let your pain define you. That's the mistake that Shadow has done. Sonic is better than Shadow because he didn't let that pain consume him of losing Longclaw.
And to just drive it home, to make it clear in case people haven't seen the movie, it's because Tom was wearing the commander's face, and Shadow blames the commander for the death of Maria, that he punched Tom. But yeah, Tom is now, his life hangs in the balance. We get worried looks from Maddie as he's loaded into an ambulance. I know he's not going to die, because if he was going to die, they'd have killed him in this very moment, the same way they did the commander earlier. But by the same token, they're gone from the movie now. They'll have a bit at the end, but this was all the James Marsden you're going to get.
All that I needed. I think it's enough. It makes him have a use, frankly. Whereas before, he was just supposed to be Sonic's dad, right? Giving good advice. he still works in that way. He's still got that Obi-Wan Kenobi advice that he gave at the beginning. And now, yes, it's flipped position. Sonic is the one crying over him the way that Shadow was crying over Maria so long ago. Meanwhile, the Robotniks have used the 2 key cards to trigger the device, and we're heading into the climax. Suddenly the Thames is swirling, the space station is lifting up, and they're going into orbit ready to blow it all up.
Oh, but we can't get to the climax until we get a little Adam Pawley in here first to remind us that he's in this universe as well, right? Sonic has to go back home to get the emerald that turns him Super Saiyan, I believe, is what's going on.
Yes, Super Sonic. And this was from the second movie, for those who don't remember, and I don't blame you if you don't, because I wouldn't have remembered if I hadn't rewatched it for Knuckles. But it was mentioned earlier when they were trying to discuss breaking into gun headquarters. Maddie's like, yeah, there's all of this we could do, but why don't you just get the emerald and become Super Sonic and go do it? And Sonic's like, we made an oath to never do that again. And only Knuckles knows where the emerald is, and Knuckles has sworn to never say, and Knuckles says anyone who tries to get it will become a sworn enemy of the echidna. So it's been set up in this movie as forbidden fruit, but now Sonic is so angry and still not a team player that he's about to go fist to fist with Knuckles to find out where this emerald is. Knuckles has become a team player since his TV series, and he's like, I'm not going to fight you, but you're going to have to go and take it from this great warrior. And yes, Wade from the Knuckles TV series and the previous 2 movies gets a cameo here. I don't think the actor was too busy. I mean, he did do the Knuckles TV series. There's just no role for Wade in this movie, so he gets 5 seconds of time playing hockey alone with the emerald as the puck, and then Sonic shows up and takes it.
A Clerks reference.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. He's Kevin Smith.
Playing hockey on the roof.
Yeah, easily gets it taken away, so what? That's all we needed of Wade. That's how we felt about Wade. And this is where we really get up in the space station. Everything comes crystal clear. Stone had already been trying to call and tell Ivo, hey, I've picked up bad vibes. We were talking about ruling the world. They were talking about destroying it. And here, Grandpa is going to confirm that they're all going to die. It's not just blowing up Earth. It's everyone will be destroyed in this explosion. And we get a flashback to why he wants to be so suicidal. Maria, Shadow, and Grandpa were all trying to get away. Here's the way I saw it, Arnie. There was like a stockpile of canisters of chaos energy. They had just kind of stacked them up in a wall. And while guards were trying to stop Shadow from getting away, because I think she was busting him out, that it was Walters, the young Walters, who grabbed the gun, and it caused the bullet to ricochet into those canisters, and that's the explosion that killed Maria.
See, here's what confuses me. In this final flashback where we see Maria's death, Robotnik is getting Maria and Shadow to escape in the night. All 3 of them. But I don't understand why Gerald wants Shadow to escape. Gerald loves his granddaughter. He'd do anything for his granddaughter. So I understand that relationship. It's the only thing Gerald cares about in his entire life is that one little girl.
Probably a cutscene, right? She asked him, let's break E.T. out.
Maybe. The thing is, we're led to believe he was using Shadow to make weapons. Shadow's chaos energy is what's going to power the space laser at the end. Robotnik is an evil person. I don't know why he was running from the agents at the end. Honestly, I thought he was so Machiavellian. He was setting this whole thing up for some reason. But Maria got killed. I just got really confused and think it's unclear what happened here and why they were escaping.
I don't know. I don't know that there's too much consternation here. I mean, to me, it reads as Robotnik was a decent guy right up until Maria died. Like, I think he was literally the chaos energy was him trying to create like a perpetual energy source, not weapons.
Yeah, he's Albert Einstein. He didn't want to build the nuclear bomb. He just wanted to get inventions going. And then when his granddaughter made her case, again, I'm betting it's an extra scene that you might get on a disc or something, where she actually convinces him, we need to help this creature do whatever. We don't know where he came from, so it's not about sending him back home, but they were trying to get him out from captivity, out of the tube, having a worthwhile life, out to freedom. And in that chaos, Walters is the man who pointed the gun, fairly or unfairly. They tried to make it seem like it's an accident that blew the canister that killed Maria. And so that's why both Shadow and Gerald are aligned with killing Walters and destroying the world. If you let your pain rule you, define who you are, you end up becoming a monster, like Godzilla.
And yes, as you say, we're now at the climax. Young Robotnik is trying to convince his grandfather, I wanted to rule humanity, not destroy it. And we're going to be destroyed in this too. So he wants to stop Gerald, whereas Super Sonic is flying into space to fight Shadow. We're getting our big fights here. Again, just some of these one-liners got me. Like, Gerald Robotnik pulls out the Nano Fist, and he's like, I haven't seen one of those since I watched Green Lantern in 2011. I was saving it for Comic-Con, but now there won't be a Comic-Con. I'm liking this stuff. It's making me smile.
Yeah, it's not terrible. And, you know, usually in these type of movies, by the time we get to this big brouhaha at the end, I've mentally checked out because it's just like, okay, this is what you have to do in a movie. But this one is, you know, it's actually kind of earning it because it's 4 characters and we have to come to some sort of conclusion here. How many of them are going to change their minds? How many of them are going to be on the right side at the end of this? Let's find out.
I mean, we know Shadow just has to be convinced. They both go golden. It should be said they think the missile's been fired up from Earth, but it's just Sonic in his gold god mode. Supersonic, is that what you're calling this?
That's what he is in the game, Supersonic.
Okay, yeah, I heard golden god, but yes, here he comes to knock right through the cannon, grab Shadow. They have a big epic fight, but that's ironic because this is Sonic just doing the thing that Shadow regrets that he did. Vengeance and violence should not go together. And eventually, you know, hit enough times, they realize that they're going to become united in turning this weapon away from Earth.
It's because Sonic doesn't throw the final punch, which could kill Shadow. Sonic's ready to do it. And then he's like, revenge has overtaken me. And, you know, there is a nice line in this movie that is what changes Shadow's mind, is he has a memory of being with Maria, looking at the stars, and Shadow says, the light shines even though the star is gone. And when Sonic here is going to monologue about the dead owl who raised him as a child,
Yeah, right.
Shadow is going to see the parallels, and that just because Maria is dead, her light can still live, and humanity doesn't need to die. And as we all knew was going to happen, Shadow now joins with Sonic, so we have Super Sonic and Super Shadow trying to stop the lasers.
In the meantime, another duel that's hammering it out, Ivo versus Gerald. They both get contraptions, of course, right? If they're Robotniks, one's going to get a Robo-Scorpion outfit, one's going to get a Robo-Praying Mantis outfit. They're going to circle each other, they're going to take some punches, and eventually they're going to do a parody of the Luke, I am your father scene from Empire.
There was one joke in this movie I was surprised they went for. One that seemed racy is when young Robotnik was in that praying mantis outfit, and he cuts off half his grandfather's mustache and calls it mantis-scaping. I was like, whoa, trimming the bush joke. Did not see that coming.
Yeah, this stuff is, you know, it's over the top and I don't need it and it's kind of making my eyes glaze over. But I did get a chuckle out of the final kill for Old Man Robotnik. That was visually funny when he just kind of got ploinked into the chaos energy like a bug zapper.
A perfect death that could bring him back or not, depending on what the hell they want to do in the future and what Jim Carrey will agree to do for money.
Yeah, it's all in Jim Carrey's hands. I'm sure they will invite him to come back and do this. And again, maybe even play other characters. You mentioned Eddie Murphy. He's played his whole entire family in some movies. So I could see Jim Carrey being asked to do something similar. But Earth is saved. The laser gets pointed at away and everyone on Earth is happy until they realize the moon is sliced in half. It's kind of a hollow victory.
That was kind of amusing, is just the look on their faces when they see what happened to the moon. I would have liked a little follow-up, like one more shot of the moon just missing its bottom or something later on in the movie. But this is where I feel like Knuckles had nothing to do, because Tails and Robotnik were re-aiming the laser while Shadow and Sonic were absorbing the power of the laser, and Knuckles was just kind of there.
Yeah, he could have been bowling for all we know.
I think he ends up catching Sonic. When they're all falling to Earth, he's sort of helping steering them.
Yeah, because Tails is trying to save Sonic, but Tails passes out in the atmosphere. Kind of odd, but it happens, and Knuckles shows up to make sure they land safely. It's hard to balance this many characters and give them all something to do, though. It really is hard, and they just don't do it all that well.
And they do it perfectly well. You're nitpicking about poor Knuckles needed a bigger he had just enough time for me. Any more, and it'd be as terrible as that miniseries.
And once again, my brain pops over to a question that I'm not sure if it's been answered. Arnie, you've seemed to pay more attention to these movies. Have they mentioned the rings before, like that they're a limited quantity type of thing? Because they said here, this is the last ring. Is that the last ring on Earth for them to transport?
They were running out of rings in that first movie and seemed to have plenty of them after the first movie, and now this is the last. I don't know if it's just the last they were carrying with them, or if it's the last ring to rule them all. I have no idea, because the first movie, the whole thing was, oh my god, that's the last ring, and they just seem to have more for some reason.
Yeah, there was a bag of rings that he had, and it was depleting, but who knows where it might have gotten replenished.
But we're gonna end with a last thing. Shadow is presumably dead. Robotnik is presumably dead. So we're back where we started, with Team Sonic being just the three, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, with the dog and Maddie, and Tom's okay. No shocker there. He's just got his arm in a sling. And Knuckles is now okay with it being called Team Sonic, and Sonic's okay with it just being called a team.
Which team is just code for family, right? I mean, this is bringing the themes together. It's certainly not sophisticated, but it is doing the job. And I do think, there were moments here where they were pulling on heartstrings.
Yeah, the dog gets another subtitled line. Anytime you have talking dogs like that in this kind of a movie, I kind of like it. I'm glad it's used sparingly, but the dog wants in on that with all the family hugs. And Sonic has another race and ends up in New York.
You're not even going to talk about the Jelly Roll song? This man is everywhere.
Was that Jelly Roll?
Yes, of course it was Jelly Roll. Who else would do a techno country song to a Sonic 3 movie?
His songs are always so kid-friendly, too.
Yeah, I personally, Jelly Roll, I think his music is whatever, but he sold fake autographs for charity. They were all auto-penned, and he screwed people over in the name of charity. That's what I think of when I think of Jelly Roll, so he can go F himself.
I was inviting you to talk about this soundtrack, which you have been surprisingly mum on, but we've had a pop-punk 99 Luft Balloons and all kinds of different jams. Again, the Traveling Wilburys, I wasn't expecting that one. I think it's been a good mix.
I do too. I was surprised they did not put out a soundtrack for this. I did go looking. I did enjoy the songs. I liked the Chemical Brothers one. The fake Imagine Dragons song, I was a little less up on, but mostly it was songs I hadn't heard. I did find a full track listing online so that I had them in my notes, but I've been mum because it's been satisfying enough. It hasn't been great. The score has been sufficient as well. Nothing pops out at me. I'm not buying the score CD, but I probably would have picked up a soundtrack if they'd made one.
And yes, we get 2 teases, which my fanboy audience was super stoked for. They were just woohooing this mid-credit stinger that meant nothing to me. What are we to know about Sonic's pink girlfriend?
Yes, that is Amy Rose, a female hedgehog who's primarily known because she really wants Sonic to date her, and she's constantly calling herself his girlfriend, and doesn't have a lot of power, so she carries a big hammer.
That sounds a little bit obnoxious. I mean, the last 2 times they teased characters, it was like, oh no, who's this? A big baddie for Sonic to fight next time. This is going to be some clinger-on girl that doesn't take no for an answer.
Well, remember at the end of the first one, the tease was Tails, and Tails just became a hanger-on.
I'm telling you, it's about love. We're also going to find out about Robotnik, how he got hooked up. They've still got to explain granddaughters. Well, who are the parents, right? There's things to be revealed there, and I'm telling you, the theme will be romance.
And what we have him fighting is Metal Sonic, which in the game is a evil Sonic created by Robotnik. So the fact that Metal Sonic is here could hint that Robotnik is not dead, but why Robotnik would be gunning for Sonic after sacrificing himself to save humanity. And, you know, Robotnik's death in this actually got to me when he does the live stream just for Stone, and he does a callback to the line from the first one about, I love the way you make them, the lattes that Stone makes. It was a line that I really laughed at in the first movie, and he does a callback to it in this live stream. It seemed like Robotnik had learned the power of love, so why would he be creating robots to go kill Sonic?
I don't know that Jim Carrey's going to come back for part 4. I really feel they're paving the way for a new villain.
I can't imagine wanting to see one of these movies without Jim Carrey in it, but I agree with you that I think getting him back is going to be a challenge if he comes back for part 4.
There are plenty of other 90s relic comedians. What's Carrot Top up to? I mean, you can definitely throw somebody else in there.
You cannot compare Carrot Top to one of the highest grossing box office earners of all time.
I mean, I just did. I just did.
But I get what Arnie's saying. I don't think they're going to go look for Branson's finest to replace Jim Carrey here.
Adam Sandler, the King of Queens. There's a lot of dudes that are needing a paycheck that will be like, sure, I'll sign on to that.
The other stinger at the end of this movie, you have to wait through the whole credits to see it. 3 seconds of Shadow picking up a bracelet. I don't even know what these bracelets were. They looked like broken handcuffs or rings or something around his wrists the whole movie.
That was the titanium handcuffs.
Were they?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't take them off until the very end when they were fighting the laser. And in this last scene, we see what looks like Shadow's hand and foot as he picks one of these discarded bracelets or handcuffs back up.
Yeah, it seems like another drop plot point. Like, those were supposed to mean something. Like, maybe they were nerfing his powers to some point, or I don't know.
Or, folks, you play the game and they're a big thing in the game and we just don't know what their utility is.
Yeah, that's possible. But we questioned if Jim Carrey would come back, but Keanu is definitely game for coming back. He and Idris Elba have talked about they could have their own spin-off show, whether they call it Shadow Knuckles or Knuckles and Shadow, or...
They could have their own band. I mean, I just think about the musical possibilities of Idris and the lead singer of Dogstar, DJ Idris.
And Ben Schwartz, he says that he wants to make 10, 15 Sonic movies. And with this weekend's box office, I think Paramount would be happy for the money. And Sonic 4 is already announced for 2027, so we'll see who they get back, but they're not going to have a big break. We'll be back at this in 2 years or less. But before that, Justin, Stewart, do you recommend Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Justin.
Well, I'll say this. I haven't overall enjoyed this trilogy of movies. You know, it's not my bag, and I really haven't loved what they've done with it. But this is their best effort so far out of the 3. And if you're only going to see one, see this one. I don't think you need to build up to the other 2 to get the themes that they're trying to pass through in this final movie, or this latest movie, I guess. They did the things that I complained about a lot less this time around, and we've already talked about it. They've sidelined the human characters and used them sparingly, but judiciously. You know, they're not just there to be there, but when they are there, they're giving exposition that's necessary to what's going on. So, great. And this one, you're never bored. It's action-packed. It's always something going on screen, so I'll give them kudos for that. But at the end of the day, it's still not something I'm enjoying. You know, I'm not going to wait for this to come out on digital and watch it the day it comes out. So that makes it hard for me to recommend it. But I guess Stuart reminds me that I recommended the last one for some reason. So if I recommended that one, this one has to be better than that. So I guess if I'm recommending it, I'm recommending it to who? People that have seen the first two and are thinking, I'm not in for the third one. Maybe. I guess who I'm recommending it to is if you've been curious about this and haven't watched any of them, skip everything else, jump in on this one and see how you feel. And that'll tell you everything you need to know about this property. But other than that, there's not a whole heck of a lot to say that hasn't been said in the other two reviews of these movies and the Knuckles TV series that we haven't already said. It's the same thing over and over again. But this time, I feel like instead of just, mailing it in, they actually put some effort into it and fixed the things that I had problems with. So that deserves a light recommend from me.
Stuart.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to be steamrolled into giving a recommend as well. And it's not because I loved it. And it's not because I was laughing. It's really just because I have to say that even though this is not made for me, I have to recommend Craft. They're doing it better this time. I think the key is they found some heart. Before, they always had the slapstick. They always had some, of the, funny repartee of Sonic zipping around in slow motion around him. Those were always some amusing moments. I knew that they would nail the comedy. They've been comfortable with the comedy throughout the series, but they haven't been able to get to the Pixar heart. It was actually quite painful in previous attempts when they tried to find life lessons. And here, the stuff with Maria, the fact that they dared to kill her, and the fact that they tied it with the other storylines of family going throughout the movie, the theme is strong enough that I really think that it's not as good as a great Pixar movie, but it's as good as one of those middle tier ones. It's Incredibles 2 level emotions being tugged at your heartstrings here. And so I think that, you gotta recognize that everyone still cares. Everyone is still doing their best, even though it's Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So take that, Detective Pikachu. Pika, Pika, Pika. This is going to finally get a recommend.
And at one point during the movie, Sonic says, when Kristen Ritter calls it Team Sonic, he's like, love the name, 10 out of 10, no notes. And I would love to walk out of a movie and be like, 10 out of 10, no notes. But unfortunately, I have notes for this movie, and I give it a 6 out of 10. The thing about this series is I do find it remarkably consistent. I didn't go back and look at my Letterboxd rankings for the first two movies when I was putting this one in. I was really tempted to say this is the best one of the series, though, which is what you said, Justin, because I do feel like it's the funniest. I do feel like it's got the best villain in Shadow. I think Keanu really brought a good quality to the voice acting. I thought the character arcs, while obvious, were sufficient. But when I walked out of the film, two really big problems with the storytelling nagged at me. The first is all about Kristen Ritter. Kristen Ritter is made to be a villain who they've run from in the first two movies where they were running from the agents. And so it seems like they have to keep the keys away from her. When in fact, by trying to go against Kristen Ritter, Team Sonic caused the entire problem. Kristen Ritter needed some kind of redemption or some kind of evil intent for this to work. And because she's just sort of there and the people of Gun aren't working with the Robotniks, that bothers me. And then the questions left around the backstory of the explosion and why Robotnik was running out of there with Maria and with Shadow were given a couple different explanations that I don't feel mesh well together. So when I looked at the ranking, I was going to give this 3.5 stars, which means I didn't love it, but I thought it was pretty solid. But I dinged it a 0.5 star just because of those problems. So I gave it 3 stars, which turned out to be the exact same ranking I gave Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. This is a remarkably consistent franchise for me. It's a recommend in keeping with that consistency, but I don't love it. I'm also not going to watch it when it comes out on streaming. I'm not going to try to evangelize this series to Marjorie and be like, you're missing out on something with your Sonic hatred. I think there's some good Jim Carrey here, and if you like Jim Carrey, you'll like his scenes, and there's quite a lot of them here as he's two different people. but it's just a fine film, not a great film. It's a recommend, but not a hugely strong one. I don't dread there being a part 4 unless it doesn't have Jim Carrey, because I do think he and Idris Elba are what's keeping the movies afloat for me, and to a degree in this one, Keanu. Those are the 3 performances that I think stand out. Ben Schwartz is a great Sonic, but I think he's almost too good as Sonic as I just take him for granted. But Idris Elba gets great one-liners as Knuckles, and Jim Carrey is doing great things as Robotniks. So without Carrey, I'll be a little bit on the hesitant side for part 4.
Yeah, but Arnie, you're judging this like by real movie standards. We're in the now playing arcade. This thing deserves an Oscar. When's the last time a video game movie has gotten 3 recommends?
True.
I mean, this is a terrible place to be. And the fact that we could all find mild enjoyment, or at least not have a painful, skin-tearing experience, is to be celebrated. And maybe a good trend as we have a few video game movies in the future. I think this spring, we're going back to the theaters at least twice. We have Minecraft. They finally got it together, and they've been running those trailers. There's a big Minecraft movie that aims to, it looks a whole lot like the Super Mario Brothers movie that they put out a while ago. And Until Dawn, which is, I guess, a horror slasher video game that people love. And sitting on some shelf somewhere is a third Silent Hill movie that may or may not see the light of day.
You know, I'm looking it up because you said that. And we were able to give 3 recommends just last year to 2 video game movies. Detention and Tetris, which doesn't quite count.
So there, again, this is a trend. We like video game movies now. They're all going to be good.
Things are looking up in the arcade.
I am going way back into the archives now, though, and I can't find a direct video game adaptation made by an American studio that we have all recommended. We haven't liked one post-COVID.
Yeah, Wreck-It Ralph, but that wasn't even direct. That was just video game adjacent.
Yeah, that's, again, we're stretching when we throw these things. The King of Kong, yeah. We pulled movies we knew we would like into it, but truly, movies based on video games, we can hope that the road continues to progress in the direction that we've seen, where we're all giving very mild arrows upward.
Yeah, I'm honestly don't have high hopes for Minecraft. It looks like a poor carbon copy of Jumanji, only you're swapping out The Rock and putting in his place Jason Momoa. And I think Jason Momoa post Aquaman 2 just does not have the cachet of The Rock.
We'll see. The audience seemed to like the preview. I know the video game somewhat. But you know what I love about Now Playing is the record-scratching noise that I feel whenever we're like, and next up, one of the slowest movies you could ever watch. We go from Sonic zipping around for 100 minutes to Barry Lyndon this Friday. We hope you join us for a Stanley Kubrick period film in which people may literally just be sitting in paintings for 3 hours.
That is our patron exclusive show for December, picked by one of our supporters. It is more Stanley Kubrick. Last month we did Spartacus. This month we're doing Barry Lyndon. I hope you guys can support us with a $10 pledge on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, or Podbean and get this bonus review. It is our 102nd patron exclusive review. So for just $10, you're getting over 100 reviews. I think that's like less than a dime a review. You could spin out dimes like Sonic has rings and get all those reviews if you just pick them all up. So please, if you can help keep us on the air in 2025, it would be greatly appreciated. And also, head-scratchingly different from Sonic, next Tuesday, we're going to be reviewing Nosferatu. Or, as I call it, no, not that Nosferatu.
Yeah, it's a whole week of Nosferatu. And the one that you want to hear about is coming out next Friday. The Tuesday one is, there was 2 movies this year. I kid you not. Look it up. Google it. Doug Jones, who is beloved for his work with Guillermo del Toro. He was the creature in Pan's Labyrinth with the eyes on his palms that chased the little girl. He was the fish guy in the Hellboy series. He was the fish guy in Shape of Water. He has decided that he wants to be Dracula in a little indie that kind of looks like it's trying to be a silent black and white movie, but isn't.
Yeah, it's definitely a Nosferatu film, a throwback to the 20s one. We will be covering that on Tuesday, and then for New Year's on January 3rd, we're doing a bonus free Friday show covering Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. So both of those coming next week for free for everyone, but we're only able to do it thanks to our supporters. And before we go, I dug through the archives and finally found a direct video game movie we all recommended, Detective Pikachu.
Hey.
They are few and far between. I was on page 5 of our video game retrospective listings on our site to find that.
Look, you don't have to tell me. I know I don't enjoy this series.
So, Justin Stewart, thank you for joining me. To all of our listeners, if you celebrate, have a very Merry Christmas. And until next time, game over.
So should we get out of here?
Yeah, time to go.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Now Playing Podcast.
That wasn't too bad.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it!
Come back to NowPlayingPodcast.com each week for another new movie review podcast.
We do have fun, huh?
Also at our site, you can find hundreds of other movie reviews, including Star Wars, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Independence Day, the Avengers films, Back to the Future, Batman, Superman, The Fast and the Furious, and more.
I feel just like Vin Diesel. It's all about family, Tom.
Now Playing Podcast is a show without any sponsors or ads. We rely on support from listeners like you to keep Now Playing operating.
How are you not dead? I have no idea.
You can donate to the show and, as our thank you, receive bonus podcasts. Over 150 bonus movie reviews are available to choose from on the Now Playing Podbean page, including Alien, Night of the Living Dead, Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, Psycho, Troll, and more.
That sounds big. It's been on my vision board for years.
Find a full list of available bonus shows at nowplayingpodcast.com/donate.
Clearly, I'm not going to be able to do this on my own.
You can also join the Now Playing Patron campaign. Patrons of $10 or more get a new exclusive movie review every month. Plus, even more perks, including one where you can pick a movie for our host to review. Find the details on our website.
Okay, let's do this.
You can help us out by leaving us a 5-star review on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, or your other podcast store of choice.
And please, 5 stars.
You can follow Now Playing on Facebook and Twitter, where we post announcements of new episodes and where the hosts post movie mini reviews. Links to our social media pages are available on our homepage.
I just thought you might like a latte with steamed Austrian goat milk. Of course I want a latte.
I love the way you make them!
Now Playing Podcast is produced by Arnie Carvalho.
Are you in charge here?
Yes, I am.
Wrong. I'm in charge.
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
I am living my best life on Earth.
Now Playing is edited by Santiago and Arnie.
Work smarter, not harder.
Now Playing credits read by Brock.
It talks.
Almost constantly.
The opinions expressed on Now Playing are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the opinion of Venganza Media Incorporated.
Confidence. A fool's substitute for intelligence.
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with the motion pictures reviewed or otherwise referred to herein. All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review and no infringement is intended.
You'll never catch me.
Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of Venganza Media Incorporated and may not be used without the expressed written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
Give me a big, fat break!
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2024, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
The time for talking is over. It's time to push buttons.
With this weekend's box office, I think Paramount would be happy for the money.
They really defeated the lion? Mufasa is not doing well?
Mufasa is going to open at like 35 compared to Sonic's 70.
Ooh, take that, Blue Ivy Carter. You ain't no star, no matter who your mama is.